What's up? It's your boy Kevin to turn on this motherfucking YouTube shit. Wow, what the fuck?
What's up? It's your boy Kevin on YouTube shit. Hey man, say man, we are entertainment. Turn to my face. Hey, so here outside, big crip in the gang, so outside shit, man. Free Palestine, free cargo, Russia the other day, and Texas stand the fuck up. These days, you gotta be a better version of yourself. Never let's not bring you down, also right back. Never let's not tell you are, also put yourself in a position to belong. Let's stay humble, let's get a revolution on the movement. Keep y'all way first. Coming to the Black Hebrew Israelite as a real Jew. We out here. Alright, boom. Today's motherfucker today. So here outside, big crip in the gang, so outside shit, man. Turn up, and it go. Bruh. So, in this world, man, you never know what can go down at any moment. You know what I'm saying? One day you think you meet the person of your dreams or the celebrity of your dreams, and it end up being a nightmare. You know what I'm saying? That's why I tell people to stay prayed up and keep God first out here, because you know sometimes you put yourself in a situation that you just don't know why it happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could think it's all fun and games until some bullshit happened. So we got David and Celeste. David, man, they trying to say he's a suspect now. We thinking that he's not a suspect because it's too obvious, but they trying to say they think he's a suspect. And they say he not, and it's a lot of bullshit behind it. And you know, we're breaking down like the history of them knowing each other, Celeste and David, which is pretty crazy. I still think that he didn't do it, but like I said, man, who really listens to David in the views? If y'all listen in the comments, let me know. And cause I really don't know him like that, but I know him now because of the what's going on. So let's get into it. Shout out to Blackie Speaks. He a real one. The new David development changed everything, and they trying to say he's a suspect now.
And, you know, police say they now consider the singer a suspect in her death and say they have better information about when she may have died.
Now, the new David, spelled D4VD, developments change everything. And I don't say that lightly, because according to sources with direct knowledge of the investigation, this case has now gone to a much deeper place than where it started. We first talked about the David story, spelled D4VD, back on September 10th, when all we had were headlines, confusion, and a single breaking news alert about a body found inside an impounded Tesla. Back then, nobody obviously understood the timeline, nobody knew who the victim was, and the entire situation felt like one giant question mark, especially because the name tied to that car belonged to a popular young singer nobody expected to see connected to something like this. Since then, a lot has been said, a lot has been assumed, and this has become one of the most confusing and emotionally charged stories I've personally covered on this channel, that's for sure. And of course, it involves a 14-year-old girl who lost her life, which makes the story even heavier to talk about. Now, my last video on this case a little over 3 weeks ago, I told you that I'd keep you updated the moment anything significant developed. And today I'm here to deliver that promise. My goal with this video is to explain why these new details are so significant and how they completely shift the timeline and direction of this investigation. So, let's get into it. Now, the first major thing we're going to talk about is that David has now been identified by investigators as a suspect in this case. And here's the thing, right? This is not an official stamp, because they do need probable cause with the help of all the evidence in order to do that on the record, and that's not the case, at least as of right now. So this does not mean that they have enough on David as of today to make an arrest. That's not where things are yet. But it does mean that detectives no longer see him as just someone connected to the car or a person they might want to question later. David is now considered a suspect, and this is pretty major. Up until now, most of the noise around this story came from commentators, journalists, and the internet trying to make sense of what happened. But when that confirmation comes from inside the investigation itself, that's very different. That carries weight.
Let me know if y'all some
what does that actually
real
mean?
hardcore
It means
David
investigators are
fans
no
in the
longer
chat
treating
who
him as
watching this
someone
video.
who just happens to be tied to a vehicle where the body was found. Yes, the Tesla was registered to David the whole time, but that alone doesn't automatically make someone a suspect. And in David's situation, that detail becomes even more complicated because with the level he was operating at, the management, the team around him, the people coming in and out of the places he stayed, we know that there were multiple individuals who potentially had access to his cars, his properties, and his general belongings. So investigators had to look deeper. People lend cars out, people borrow things, people come and go, and detectives obviously know that. They needed more than a registration to take the next step. Now, it does not mean that they've reached a conclusion. It does not mean he's guilty, and it does not mean an arrest is guaranteed or around the corner. But it does mean the investigation has now moved into a different phase. And according to sources with direct knowledge of the case, this wasn't something that happened overnight. Detectives have been working quietly behind the scenes for weeks, interviewing people close to the situation, cross-checking timelines, examining digital information, reviewing physical evidence, and this is the point where they felt like they had enough to place him in that category. And when you look back at how this entire story began, a body discovered inside the front trunk of a Tesla registered to him, this suspect classification becomes one of the most serious developments we've seen since the very beginning. This is the moment where the tone of the investigation shifts. This is when the pressure increases, and this is when detectives begin focusing in a lot more than before.
That happened months before her remains were found in the trunk of that Tesla on September 8th. And now the source also tells us that pop singer David is being considered a suspect in her death.
Now, connected to the suspect status, there's another major development investigators are focused on right now. Two separate law enforcement sources have told reporters that detectives do not believe this was a one-person job. According to those sources, investigators think a second individual was involved in the effort to dispose of Swiss body during the months before she was found inside that Tesla. One source even said confidently that investigators believe that more than one person was involved in the handling of the teen's body in the months before her remains were found in that Tesla, according to two law enforcement sources familiar with the inquiry. So the fact that law enforcement sources are speaking that boldly is pretty crazy to me. So now the focus isn't just on what happened.
But why would he put in his own car for everybody to see it unless it's a ritual?
A friend, someone in the circle maybe, or someone the public doesn't even know exists. As of right now, we don't have those answers yet. But when detectives believe a second person was involved, that tells you this wasn't one terrible moment or one impulsive decision. It suggests planning. It suggests coordination. It suggests someone else out there is holding secrets and staying quiet, at least for now. Because based on some things that we're going to talk about later on in the video, there are witnesses and even informants already cooperating with police behind the scenes. And this is according to law enforcement sources. So it's only a matter of time before those pieces connect. Now we're left with some heavy questions. How far does this thing actually extend? Who helped and why? If investigators are right about what they're claiming, this case goes way deeper than anyone imagined when the first headlines hit. And the thing about investigations like this is once detectives have that story lined up, once they connect, the digital evidence, the timelines, and the, witness statements, right, that's when everything can come crashing down very fast. Now, on top of that, there's another major development investigators revealed. It's now been confirmed that David is not cooperating with law enforcement. When this story first broke back in September, every early report, every headline painted the picture that he was, in fact, cooperating. And to be fair, it was extremely early in the process. Detectives had just discovered the body. They were still identifying the remains, and everyone was simply trying to figure out what had happened. And that was, at the end of the day, the information that was being revealed. So the story was that he had spoken with investigators in some capacity, and he was in fact cooperating. But now we're learning that this is not the case as of right now. According to a LAPD source with direct knowledge of the investigation, the same source who confirmed that he was a suspect, David has not been cooperating with detectives. This information was directly reported to NBC4 Investigates. And this completely shifts the tone of things, right? Because when someone stops cooperating, especially in a case as serious as this, it impacts how investigators move forward, how they gather information, and how they interpret the timeline. It doesn't automatically mean wrongdoing. It doesn't confirm guilt. I want to make that very clear. But in the eyes of the investigators, non-cooperation from someone who is now officially labeled a suspect, that is very significant. And typically when someone steps back from cooperating with investigators, they start viewing that person differently, okay? It's very natural. Because in most cases, if someone is purely, let's say, a witness, they're willing to talk. In most cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, if they're just a witness, they're going to speak up, right? But in this case, when cooperation stops, detectives have to consider the possibility that the individual may be connected to the situation in a deeper way, which of course, we know that David was connected to this in some type of way the whole time. Now, here's what we don't know, okay? We don't know when David stopped cooperating. People stop cooperating for all kinds of reasons. Let's make that clear, okay? Sometimes it's legal advice. Sometimes it's fear of saying the wrong thing. Sometimes it's pressure, confusion, or simply not wanting to be involved any further. And let's be honest, a lot of people don't fully trust law enforcement in general. Even if you're completely innocent, if the police starts asking you questions, your guard is going to go up. That's human nature. I mean, I know for me personally, if officers approach me in a situation where I, let's say, didn't see anything, didn't know anything about whatever it was that they were talking about, I'd be very cautious too, okay? And a lot of people can definitely relate to that. And another thing to keep in mind is the reality of the music industry. When an artist reaches a certain level, there are a lot of people financially tied to their career. Labels, management, teams, partners. So in situations like this, there's often a lot of legal guidance, a lot of caution, and a lot of protection around what the artist says or doesn't say. That's just how the industry operates. But here's where things take a much stranger turn, because according to investigators, Celeste's death didn't happen anywhere near September. It likely happened months earlier in the spring, and that detail changes everything. According to a law enforcement source who spoke to the LA Times, Celeste may have been dead for months, likely dating all the way back to the spring before her remains were finally discovered in September. And if that's true, I mean, think about what that means. It means there's a massive gap in the timeline that nobody publicly knew about. So that in itself raises a whole new set of questions. Where was Celeste during all those months after she disappeared? Who was she around? And how did nobody notice something was terribly wrong for that long? Now, yes, she had run away from home multiple times. We know that, which might explain why her absence didn't immediately set off anyone's alarm bells, right? But that's a heartbreaking conversation on its own that we're not going to go into right now. This spring timeline is one of the biggest twists in the entire investigation because it forces everyone, detectives included, to rethink how this happened. Now let's also address something important. A few days ago, multiple outlets, including Rolling Stone and TMZ, reported that Celeste's body may have been refrigerated or even frozen before being placed inside that Tesla. You might have heard about this news, and the reports said that investigators were apparently exploring that freezing theory and that outside forensic experts were being brought in to help understand the condition of the remains. But now we have an official update, and that information has actually been refuted by law enforcement. And LAPD Scott Williams told reporters that the body was not frozen despite what a lot of media outlets had been saying. The LAPD also put up the following statement saying this: the Los Angeles Police Department is aware of the recent stories posted by various media outlets about the David Celeste Rivas investigation and would like to dispel some misinformation contained in their reporting. The body of Celeste Rivas was not frozen when it was discovered on September 8, 2025. She had not been decapitated. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because the freezing theory actually ended up going viral. A lot of people saw it. A lot of people repeated it. And for a lot of folks, it became part of what they thought was the truth about this case. And this is why I want you to be very careful about trusting every single detail you see online about the situation and the story. Guys, there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of assumptions, and a lot of headlines that don't really match what investigators are actually saying. And I'm not saying that I'm above ever getting something wrong either. I'm human. And if I make a mistake and new information comes out that proves it, I'm always going to come back, point it out, and correct it in front of you, because that's the only way to cover a story like this. It's just the right thing to do. And also, I'm not trying to bullshit you. You get what I'm saying? I have enough respect for you to the point where I'm not going to sit here and lie and make stuff up. And then when I'm wrong, I'm not going to acknowledge it. That's just not how I do things, okay? Now, there's another lead detectives are said to be reviewing, and it points to a location about a 2-hour drive outside of Los Angeles. David's alleged secret trip to Santa Barbara. According to TMZ, who cites a source with knowledge of the investigation, a critical part of the case involves a mysterious trip David allegedly took to a remote area of Santa Barbara County in the middle of the night. Now, I do want to point this out. TMZ uses the phrase last spring, while NBC states in the spring of 2025. So there's a bit of a wording conflict in how different sources describe the timeline. That's something investigators will ultimately clarify as they piece everything together. Personally, I'm going with spring 2025 though, because that's what we know, okay? But that's beside the point. If detectives believe the death occurred in the spring of 2025, which obviously that would make sense, then any unexplained late-night travel to remote areas during that same period becomes something they have to look at closely. Does this trip overlap with the window when Celeste disappeared? We don't know the answers to those questions yet, obviously. We don't know what, if anything, investigators found in that area, and we don't know whether this moment ends up being a crucial part of the timeline or just a coincidence that happened during that same period, allegedly. But what we do know is this: investigators are aware of this trip, allegedly, and it's something that detectives are currently reviewing as they try to understand what really happened. And while all this was unfolding, something unusual happened online. As I was going through the public records like I always do when I cover cases like this, I noticed that the information on the medical examiner's website had actually been completely removed. So there's absolutely no information that you can find about it on the medical examiner's website. Up until this point, no one knew why that happened, but after digging further and reviewing new reports and court filings, now we finally have the answer, and this is the truth about that. The LAPD went to a judge and successfully got a court order to seal everything about this, about this case right here, and specifically in relation to Celeste's autopsy. And when I say everything, I mean everything: cause of death, manner of death, autopsy results, physical evidence, the entire findings, completely locked away, at least for now. And the reasoning here gets even more intense. The detective behind this request, Detective Joshua Byers, a veteran from the Elite Robbery Homicide Division, he told the court that releasing these details could jeopardize the investigation, not just by showing what police already know, but by revealing witnesses and informants, who are actively helping detectives.
Damn.
Meaning there are people talking,
you gotta understand, it's a lot of social media
cooperating,
people,
and police believe their safety
niggas
could be at risk
like
if the truth comes out too early. So what looked like a random website update was actually law enforcement tightening their grip on the case. And the judge, his name is Craig Richmond, he agreed. He granted LAPD's request, sealing the entire file. The medical examiner's office literally had to stop releasing information to the public, every detail locked behind legal protection. Now, here's where it gets interesting, okay? Even the chief medical examiner himself, Dr. Ode Ukbu, who, by the way, is the first African-American to ever lead that office since it was created back in 1850, he publicly pushed back against this decision, and this is what he said: "The practice of security holds is virtually unheard of in other counties and has not been proven to improve outcomes in the legal system. We are dedicated to serving our community with full transparency. However, the law precludes us from doing so while the court order remains in this case." And he actually denied LAPD's first attempt back in September 15th, about a week after this entire thing came out, right? Saying they didn't provide enough justification. But now that justification has arrived and that hold is officially in place. And the LAPD, they're not really denying any of this, right? A captain from the department explained why, and this is what he said: "Detectives need to receive the information before the public does, so nothing leaks that could compromise what they're building behind the scenes." Now, when police is fighting this hard to control information, it usually means they're closing in on something or someone they don't want to be tipped off too early, right? And that brings us to another revelation. In these very same court filings, for the first time ever, LAPD officially described this as an investigation into murder. Now, sure, we all assumed that from the beginning. I mean, a 14-year-old little girl found dismembered in a truck, in the front of a trunk, I should say. Of course, somebody did that to her, right? But this is the first time law enforcement themselves have put that word, exact word, into the record, right? So they're not just describing this as a tragic death, and it's not an accidental situation or anything like that. It's officially a murder investigation. I think these developments are significant because of what they really communicate. This isn't just police gathering information anymore. This isn't a wait-and-see situation, that there are people that are actively building a case around and against, and that releasing the wrong detail to the public too soon could jeopardize everything they've been putting together in silence. The LAPD didn't go to court unless they felt they were protecting more than just paperwork. They're protecting their strategy, they're protecting witnesses, they're protecting whatever evidence they've already connected to someone or more than one person. So you can feel the tone of this entire investigation shifting. I mean, they're definitely turning up the heat right now. And you can see that through their actions. This is a serious targeted pursuit of accountability. And on the conversation of accountability, the LAPD deputy who's overseeing the investigators working on this case, he actually said, and I quote, "Accountability is coming. Our robbery homicide detectives have been working and not waiting for that decision by the medical examiner. They are going to get justice for Celeste Rivas." And then he said the following: "No one is off the table."
Yeah, I think she would have been. They would have had the
He's
same
talking
type
about
of like.
David. So that is one of
If
the
it was a black
strongest
girl,
public signals
let's be
we've
honest.
heard so far in this
Talk
case.
about it.
Sounds like they're very confident in solving this. So now the tone from investigators isn't "we're figuring things out." It's "justice is coming. Someone will be held responsible. And anyone tied to this in any way is being looked at, including David himself." And through all of this, guys, it's very important to remember the heart of this entire case. A 14-year-old girl lost her life. A child should have had years ahead of her. Laughter, memories, dreams, growth, all of it.
I mean, she was a
Sometimes
goofy though.
these stories get so big,
she
so
passed away,
complicated,
she lost life,
so
but she was a
shocking
goofy.
that people
Let's
forget
be
there's
honest.
a real
She was a
family
goofy-ass girl.
behind all of
You know what I'm
this.
saying?
There's
I'm
a
not
real
gonna
life
act
that
like
was
she just
lost.
innocent. She
A
was
family
goofy.
that wakes up every day without their daughter. A family that didn't get a
She
chance
been
to say
running away
goodbye.
doing goofy shit.
It's a real
Like,
tragedy.
bruh,
And
like,
honestly,
what the fuck?
I wish things could have been different for Celeste. Nobody deserves an ending like this,
That's a
especially not a
fact, bro.
child. Okay, I wish we lived in a world where kids were
But she
protected,
was a
where they were
goofy.
safe at all times, and where stories like this didn't have to exist. However complicated this investigation becomes, however many updates come out, one thing cannot get lost. Celeste mattered. Her life mattered. And that should always stay at the center of this conversation, okay? And I promise you, I will make sure it does. If you found this breakdown helpful, feel free to drop a like. It really helps the channel out. And just on a lighter note, by the way, guys, I actually created a second channel called Mo Speaks, where I'll be covering a lot of different...
This for all the people who don't really know who David is. Like, I know David since like all the shit that been happening, but I guess it's like this a deep dive.
On September 8th, 2025, police officers found body parts in the trunk of a vehicle showing signs of prolonged malnourishment. Upon further investigation, they discovered these were the remains of a teenage girl that had been missing for 17 months, and that the car belonged to indie artist David, who had over 30 million listeners and songs with almost 250 million views on YouTube. An already dark and tragic incident became even darker as people online slowly unraveled 4 years of David foreshadowing this would happen through his music, which he was performing the same day the body was found. This is one of the most downright evil stories I've ever covered, so viewer discretion is advised. All the way back in 2018, 13-year-old David Anthony Burke was a homeschooled kid with not just a normal family, but an unusually well-to-do family unit. His parents were still together, had a strong religious background, and were well off financially, as his dad was a regional litigation support project manager for a global firm with 75 offices and a staff of over 1,500 attorneys. Browsing his LinkedIn briefly shows you just how many huge law firms he dealt with and how much experience he had. By all means, the Burke family was well supported and had everything they needed. However, David had mostly unsupervised access to the internet, and they simply had no idea the kinds of things he would expose himself to. But we'll get to that later. To their knowledge, and likewise to the public's knowledge, David's teenage years had him either studying or playing Fortnite and making edits and montages of it. But due to the prominent role music plays in Fortnite edits, he found his content getting frequently copyright striked. Over the course of 3 years where he struggled with this problem, he decided to take his interest in artists like XXXTentacion and Tyler the Creator to try his hand at making his own music to avoid copyright. This culminated in the release of his first song on YouTube, Runaway, which was released in December 2021. From the get-go, the themes in his music are very clear and repetitive. The speaker in the song is trying to get someone they love to come live with them, feeling sad when they feel their feelings are not reciprocated, fearing that their partner is running away, and lastly, having these feelings boil over into aggression and jealous anger. In a song from February 2022, he says, "I look into your eyes and I can see right through your lies. I think we both know who dies here. You can't leave the past behind. You're the only one that lies here." In another song from just 1 month later, he has the phrase, "Save your tears 7 years" in the chorus. And I think at this point it's necessary necessary to introduce you to David's alleged victim for legal purposes. Celeste
So we all
Rivas
know.
Hernandez, born on September 7th, 2010, meaning in early 2022,
Damn,
she'd
2010?
have been 11, 7 years away from being 18. Meanwhile, David would be 17. While no one had any reason to suspect anything at the time, the contents of his music only became more concerning. Over his next two songs that are almost follow-ups to one another, the narrative David is describing goes from just needing a friend to a song called More Than Just Friends, where he says, "I told you keep it 10, or you'll end up dead." Pieces put together like a puzzle. Over the next 8 songs, this narrative is mostly maintained, with David talking about being sent into jealous frenzies and obsessively sending whoever he's talking to hundreds of messages, while occasionally saying things like, "trying to kill you slowly," and "we're gonna die tonight." As much as it's pretty commonplace for these themes to appear in this kind of music, it often seemed like David was being a bit too oddly specific about his subject matter. This is even more the case when you factor in the kinds of things he was tweeting at the time, such as, "When I was writing this, I got a notification from you, as you were talking about wanting to be with your mom and your sister again. Take me where I belong, but your circumstances won't allow us to be in our ideal situations. We gotta push through it, bro." It's one thing for there to be odd lyrics, but this is just him talking on a tweet about how someone needs to push through their wishes to be with their mom and sister again. While the post he was replying to there is now gone, there is a Wayback Machine snapshot of what the original exchange was. In it, David, with his old handle, Ant Part 2, is replying to someone named 6K4TE, who says, "This relates to how I feel so heavily," to one of his songs. The only other hit for this exact handle is a Pinterest profile whose last piece of activity took place 11 months ago. Currently, this Twitter handle is being used by someone else who is not related to the original owner of the handle or David, so don't go messaging them because they have nothing to do with anything. The only other significant
They
pieces
famous
of
now.
David's Twitter activity from around this period are him saying that religion is a money scheme and that he'd been studying nihilism lately. Although she was probably there for longer, the earliest record of a Celeste in David's Discord server comes from October 2022, when she would have been 12. It's around this time that we got one of the most damning instances of David telling on himself. The music video for the track Romantic Homicide. The video depicts David in some pretty ritualistic scenes, surrounded by candles with a blindfold on, standing in front of a seemingly deceased girl. Later on, it's suggested that the evidence of the crime is hid away inside of a suitcase. The lyrics aren't very specific, but they too reflect the same themes from before, killing someone he loves. While his previous songs had already gotten some degree of attention, this one was by far his biggest hit yet, taking him from being an obscure indie artist to being in the same category as people like Juice WRLD. Last but not least, if you check the date this video was posted, it was exactly on the 7th of September, Celeste's birthday. Maybe due to how much success this song got him, David got even bolder about subliminally referencing the insidious things he was doing behind the scenes. 2 months into the new year, he started opening up to his Discord server, which obviously was full of minors. In a long string of messages, he said, "I used to be addicted to watching gore videos. Live Leak was bookmarked. Lamau. I saw a cartel execution on Reddit when I was 14. Got to the point where I don't even cringe when I see it no more. I remember laughing at one point. It got bad, man. I like writing gory psychological drama, romantic quotes, and a lot of death. I love gore. Gore is better than adult videos." This is absolutely not the first time someone has mentally self-destructed via gore videos. There is such a huge community online of absolute freaks surrounding this kind of thing that I'm surprised there hasn't been a massive crackdown on it. And that's without mentioning how the same platform for this kind of video often leads to other more illegal kinds of content. Another sign David was getting increasingly comfortable with letting other people know was that the entire server was at least somewhat in on the fact that he was with Celeste. Some kind of bot on his server shared what looks like a playlist called Celeste in David's Closet. In late March, someone going by the name James Buttergun said David only added underage girls to the server, and even specified that this wasn't some kind of joke, even if other users in there would joke about it it openly. While I'm sure plenty of people had no idea about David's proclivities, based on the messages that have become public, at least some of them absolutely did, to the point where they even knew which girl specifically David talked to more frequently. One Reddit user said, one of the old Discord screenshots were two guys, allegedly, chatting, and they said that David wouldn't add them back, but he followed his underage girl fans immediately. One of them made a teenage catfish girl account, and David immediately followed his catfish account back. But his self-tells notoriously don't limit themselves to his Discord messages. A music video from November 2022 featured a girl that looked similar to Celeste. Another one from February 2023 depicted him playing the part of a dead body, specifically wearing clothes to make him appear smaller than he actually was, and getting placed into the back of a car. On April 3rd, he released a promotional video that opened with these words.
You see, when a human being is drained of all of its blood, it becomes pale, lifeless, just as the rose. Visually
Man, who the fuck
only
listens
good
to
to
this
observe
videos, man?
and admire. But the moment you go to pick it up, you get stabbed.
He released 2 other projects this year, and again, we can find various allusions to his secret, having to defend his quote-unquote love from people who questioned it, being obsessive and even self-destructive, references to roses and shovels, describing himself as the devil, and becoming aggressive when his partner tries to leave. While most of the music videos are innocuous, the girls in them always look like Celeste, although one of them stands out as the most disturbing of all. On the 7th of September, Celeste's birthday, the anime video for a song called Rehab was released, wherein the female character gets butchered, literally cut into pieces by David's character. Uncoincidentally, around the same time this video came out, David makes a song called Celeste that, although he'd never released it, ended up leaking. In it, there are lyrics about Celeste only opening up when she's high and having his name tattooed on her chest. Up until this point, there were only allusions, and this was the first time he outright said her name in a song. Even if he didn't release it, it leaked anyway. And more, it seemed like David was getting something out of teasing his followers with his illegal activities. In the same month, David did a stream with Celeste visibly in the background, and when people asked who she was, he only replied with, "You are a Fed." This person who asked about her, a Discord user called Lamp, was then threatened by David, who said, "Wallahi, he's finished. I know what he leaked already. We're literally preparing to sue him, Lamau. Lamp is about to owe $30,000. Legal team going bonkers right now." How confident can a guy be that he's threatening to get legal with someone, as they literally have a picture of him with a 13-year-old girl? To make matters worse, for the whole year of 2023, he was actively looking for other minors to do the same thing to, as he had been caught DMing girls well under the age of 18. In January 2024, he made a post on TikTok with a bunch of Hello Kitty gear, and when someone commented asking David to adopt them, David replied, tagging an account that was clearly an alt, saying, "Should we?" This account had little to no activity, but was listed as having Celeste's birthday, meaning it possibly belonged to her. But besides this post, David was less explicit about his criminal involvement with Celeste in his music, but that doesn't mean the situation was getting any better. Quite the opposite, actually. In mid-February 2024, a Facebook user by the name of Dora Hernandez made a post which read, "Celeste Hernandez is my niece. She's missing this morning and didn't get to her classes in Lake Elsinore, California. She is 13 years old. If anyone has seen her, please contact me or her parents, Mercedes Martinez, or call the police." Immediately after, Celeste's mother, Mercedes, also made a post asking for help, and the efforts to locate her waged on for the next few days, coming from multiple family members and acquaintances of her. However, about 5 days later, Mercedes made a currently unavailable post that was replied to by the rest of the family, with things like, "Thank God our prayers have been answered." And in another exchange, a redacted person said she came home last night, which leads me to think that she was found around the 20th of February. Right around the same time, David was posting more frequently about some Hello Kitty girl, which absolutely meant he was talking about Celeste, as she was known to like Sanrio merch. In a confusing turn of events, within 2 months, Celeste was once again announced to be missing, seen the last time on the 5th of April wearing Hello Kitty sandals. This has led some people to theorize that some members of her family knew that she was with David and were okay with it, and that others weren't and continued commute to press for her to come home. Ultimately, we don't know the exact details of how this all went down, but the fact that she was with David is an absolute certainty. On his Discord server, it was widely acknowledged that they were now officially dating, and some people even knew that his girlfriend was the missing girl, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. This person, Ponzalo, is one of the first people to call David out on it. And in other messages, he said, David took my little sister's friend to LA to bang in his house while she's 12. Did y'all know David likes kids? I want to tell everyone about how David is a creep. As far as I know, besides Ponzalo, the only other person to be going after David over this was a random TikTok commenter called Robin River in February 2024, when Celeste went missing for the first time. Among those who were familiar with David, it was simply common knowledge that he had basically kidnapped this girl. Adding insult to injury, he streamed with her on Twitch, and although she was wearing a hoodie and big glasses, it was clearly her. At some point during it, this moment happened.
I media trained you.
No, you didn't.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of kids.
Really good.
Okay,
It's
bye.
been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my. Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes. Everything goes. Everything.
He was basically flaunting one of the most egregious crimes imaginable for hundreds of people to see, all while being world famous. In TikTok posts and Instagram stories, he hints at basically paying her to stay with him. Around April 2024, when she was reported missing for the second time, an unreleased song called Drink and Drive was made, containing lyrics such as, "Are you still under the car? Stay with me. I know it's my fault. Oh God, I'm here. Can't you take me instead? She didn't deserve to go. I'll be crying in this jail cell tonight." While these are contextualized within the song, they are also eerily foreboding considering the ultimate end of this story. It's also shortly after the second missing report that possibly the worst detail of this story took place. In messages that Celeste allegedly exchanged with someone called Anissa, she said, "Anissa, do not text. He came back. He's crying. Do not text me. I fixed him. I'm staying. I fixed him. I don't know how. We both cried to get her, and he changed his mind. I'm happy he did, though. Anissa, you have to swear you're going to stay safe. Are you still going to talk to David, or go back with him? Because I don't want you to get in any more trouble with him. Celeste, I'm safe. No, I'm not. Now, I've already made a disclaimer earlier, but either way, I'm going to paraphrase instead of straight up reading the following messages due to how vile it is. To sum it up, Celeste said that she has bled as a consequence of something that happened with David, and just a couple of messages later says that she was also pressured into being with someone else by the name of Gus. Almost equally concerning is that David began saying in interviews that once he put together enough money, he planned to move to some remote island completely off the grid. Specifically, he noted he'd do this in about 4 years, which is when Celeste would be turning 18. Whatever his ultimate plans for her were at this time, they were clearly developing in scale. His dedication to this secret objective of his was to the point that, according to Instagram user Chandler OTD, David had begun paying people off to keep their mouths shut about him being with a minor. And there's even a picture of what appears to be him doing it in some parking lot. Someone else on Reddit by the name of Alpha Tango Cheesecake made similar claims, saying, "This guy is a creep from what I've heard. My sister, who is now in 9th grade, told me that he was dating an 8th grader and she would go on trips with him to LA. They're all in 9th grade now, and it turns out Celeste's friends knew and he would pay them to keep their mouth shut. Celeste has been missing for over a month now, and no one knows her whereabouts. Definitely something strange going on." Despite how many times he professed his love for her, the tune slowly started to change after she went missing, presumably to go live with him. In June, he made a post captioned, "Me after hearing about her past with other boys, I'm jealous and disgusted by her actions," with a background image being Patrick Bateman holding a nail gun to a woman's head. Now, in any other context, I would just assume this is a complete joke and has literally no meaning behind it, but it's definitely disturbing given what we know now. And keep in mind, she was 13 going on 14 at this time, so any past she had with other people was necessarily the actions of a minor. Besides this, there's also a post suggesting an interest in cannibalism, another one pouring boiling water on her for telling another boy happy birthday, and most concerning of all, one captioned, "Me if I see her talk with other dudes," showing David cutting up meat. Slowly, these themes solidified, and after enough time passed since Celeste was reported as missing, passing, David once again became bold enough to start hinting at what he was up to in his music videos. In February 2025, he released one for the song One More Dance, where he is stuffed in the trunk of a car and taken out to the middle of the woods to be buried. About a month later, he previewed a song with the following lyrics: "Nobody ever caught me, but I spoke too soon in the back of a police car. I forgot whatever I knew. I ain't telling nothing. Do the same if they ask you about her." Despite how much this sounds like he's just talking about his plans for Celeste, in the context of the rest of the song, he's talking about something that took place in November 2016. But as far as is publicly known, there's no signs he committed any kind of crime back then. I should note, however, that he has one other song where he says, "You wouldn't believe what I did as a kid back in 2016.
Acrobat Studio is all new. What can
Basically tell on himself in his music. People should start giving real consideration that he may have actually done something in November 2016. Now, before I fully get into all of the allusions David made to his eventual crime through his music, I'd like to give attention to an interview he gave in late April, where he said this.
Yeah, man, romantic homicide was just like, I wanted to feel what the other kids were feeling like. Everybody I knew, well, in middle school that I didn't talk to anymore, everybody had relationships. I didn't have a relationship. I wanted to do that. I wanted to be involved in this or have a heartbreak for myself. So I kind of just like made up these scenarios of myself getting heartbroken and being in love and stuff like that. I would write songs about things that never happened.
Given he was born in 2005, 2016 is right when he'd be middle school aged, exactly 11 years old. I think this is relevant not just because he's made multiple references to having done something in 2016, but also because whatever this something may have been, it's a significant part of why he later on went after Celeste, also when she was 11. Now, to cover his music, there are more suggestions that Celeste was now refusing to say she loved him, and some of the lyrics became quite ominous, such as, "He might have you, but I've got your ghost, and we both know that's the real you, and God knows it's true. I love you the most, but we both know what I have to do. Eyes looking right through me. Why can't I hear your heartbeat? Dance with me under the moon above. Let us keep this perfect memory." This is probably one of the most dense set of lyrics yet, as the main theme here is one that's a pattern among many serial killers. The idea that killing someone somehow attaches them to you in a subservient role for eternity, with some of them, like the cannibal Jeffrey Dahmer, even considering it a kind of romantic intimacy. Ed Kemper even called his victims his spirit wives. Given David's documented interest in that kind of macabre culture, it would make perfect sense for him to have developed this same kind of sick delusion surrounding Celeste. Secondly, the mention of the moon is relevant because in 2025, Celeste's birthday, which had been a common release date for David's projects, fell right on a blood moon, which harkened back to his ritualistic depictions in his music videos. Another interesting theme that shows up in this period is the strings. In his album, there's an interlude called The Invisible String Theory, where David and an unknown person talk about how some people are inevitably tied together by fate. But much more importantly, in two music videos and the cover art for one of his album singles, there is the prominent presence of red strings, specifically. Following the idea that David is enamored not only by gore, but also about true crime, serial killers, and things of that sort, it would make sense that he's also into the TV show Dexter, which has recently experienced a huge resurgence in popularity due to online memes about it and new spin-offs. First, the whole blood moon thing is a small but significant motif both in the original show, being present in one of the most meaningful and well-known scenes, which you've probably seen in edits, and in the sequel show New Blood. Secondly, we have the red string motif, which was a calling card of one of the original show's most well-known serial killers, Brian Moser, who was known for dismembering his victims and stringing them back together. Unsurprisingly, when David's crime was revealed, many people noticed the connections and called David the Bay Harbor Butcher, which is Dexter's name as a serial killer. But before we get to that, I think it's relevant to say that despite all of the red flags imaginable and a lot of the information that I've gone over being easily found online, 2025 marked the greatest year of David's career. From officially collaborating with Fortnite and making the anthem for it, to collaborating with artists like Kali Uchis, and having Pokimane in one of his music videos, to having songs of his be featured in extremely mainstream TV shows like Invincible and Arcane, all of which got to tens of millions of views. By all accounts, his wildest dreams had come true, but at the same time, someone else's worst nightmare followed suit. On the evening of the 8th of September, fresh off the blood moon and Celeste's birthday, there was a 2023 Tesla with Texas license plates in an impound yard on the 1000th block of North Mansfield Avenue in Los Angeles, which was emitting a foul odor. At that point, it had been there for over 3 days, and before that, it had been parked at Bluebird Avenue for 3 weeks, with some sources saying more than a month. A big metal box in Los Angeles heat with something inside of it. When the cops were called to see about the smell, they opened the front trunk, finding a plastic bag containing the cut-up remains of a girl, about 5'2", weighing just 71 pounds, with wavy black hair, wearing a tube top and leggings. When Celeste went missing the year prior, she was listed as weighing 130 pounds, and now only 70, signaling she had lost a significant amount of weight since then, even accounting for the weight the body loses as it decomposes. The body was soon identified, and upon further investigation, police found that the vehicle was registered to David Anthony Burke and hadn't been reported as stolen. While all of this was going on, David was performing his music, including all of the stuff he wrote about her. If that weren't enough, one TikTok compiled the many theatrics David had during his show, all of which allude to what he did to Celeste. Part of what led not only to the identification of Celeste's body, but also her connection to David, was the shush tattoo he had on his finger. Although this has been widely reported to mean that she also had a tattoo with shush on her finger, there are pictures of what she had tattooed that just looks like David's name in red. Again, this is another sign of what kind of dynamic they had. While she had his actual name on her finger, he only had an expression for secrecy and silence. Additionally, another connection made by people on Reddit is that the original location of the Tesla with Celeste's remains before it was towed was just a little over 100 yards away from where he used to live in Los Angeles, and his place has since been investigated by the police. David's future shows were promptly canceled, and he's been described as fully cooperative with law enforcement, although he hasn't been officially listed as a suspect or even a person of interest. One of the first people to speak out publicly about what had just been uncovered was Celeste's brother, Matthew Hernandez. According to NBC LA, Matthew said that family members who still live in Lake Elsinore knew that Celeste knew David, and that Celeste's disappearance took place when she went to see a movie with him. Simultaneously, to someone who decided to contact him on Instagram, Matthew said, "Yes, it was David. I met him once in person. I knew about him taking Celeste and went to the police about it, but lack of evidence, so it was waved off. Even then, they don't do anything. They haven't even done anything towards him. She was always saying that he was waiting until she was 18 to get married and stuff like that. My sister wouldn't say anything, ever. Please send me more if you know. I never knew about the Discord server. I wish I would have known. I could have used this. I don't even have Discord." Matthew then sent a few previously unreleased pictures of Celeste and confirmed the authenticity of the text message exchanges where Celeste identifies someone else who had been with her. But Matthew remarks that this Gus person has since been shot dead. Someone else who came forward was a friend of his and former teammate from when David was still a Fortnite player.
"I think most of you all know I've known David for about 3.5 years, and the internet knows a 15-year-old girl was found disconfigured in the front of his car. Can't even say 15 because she was 14 when she passed. For those who don't know, David used to be a professional Fortnite player in the team that I was leading, Limit. Back then, I used to make music on my computer. He didn't have a good computer, so I told him about Bein and he started making music, and it completely popped off. And David, even before and after fame, he's always been a really nice person, like a little bit too nice, like comically nice. And for those who've been following me for a while, you know I used to have this ongoing joke over and over and over again about me dissing on David and us having like fake beef. Literally a year ago today, I posted, "The enemy, know the enemy is David." And I would always make comments just hating on him because I thought it was funny to portray, I'm jealous of him, it should have been me. And flash forward to today, this is absolutely disgusting. He has known this girl since she was either 11 or 12.
Another member of his Fortnite team added more context to how they all initially met. "We were all in a Fortnite team called Chronic, which is where I met him. He met her in 2021 through Fortnite, I'm pretty sure. Then he made her get Discord. Everyone in the team knew about her, and he would joke about it and brush it off every time it got mentioned. That's all I personally know, but my friend Pistol knows more because they talked way more. She would literally say he raped her, but then follow it up with a joke, so I don't know if she was being for real or not. He was also just a weirdo, to be honest. He used to send gore in group chats. It does seem to be the case that a Fortnite team called Chronic was active at that point in time, and it also seems to be the case that David was affiliated with them in some way, at least based on this video title. On the other hand, Celeste's Discord account is verified to have been created in January 2021, which would make her 10. as she would only turn 11 in September that year, which is all the more horrific. Someone else who knew David and claimed they briefly dated when she was 16 and he was 18 claimed she had seen him with Celeste, but never had any idea of anything that was going on. But besides people who knew David, some that knew Celeste also chimed in, including one called Exile's Funeral, who said, "Last time me and Celeste called, she was drunk and spam calling David. They have matching tattoos from when they dated. David used to have pictures of her up on his Instagram, but after they broke up, he took it off. Only thing throwing me off is the age, but I'm just gonna assume she lied about her age to everyone in our friend group back then, because they did date, and then 2 days after that call with me, she deleted her whole account. Pictures too, also looks just like her. No way it's another Hispanic Celeste with the same curls, same face. That just doesn't make sense. Gets to a point with coincidences." This same person followed up outside of Discord, providing a series of screenshots of Instagram chats dated to December 2024, corroborating their claims to have been in contact with Celeste at that point in time. Due to how much attention this case got and how complicit many of the people in his Discord server were, the people who were in charge of administrating it felt the need to go out of their way to make an announcement. We, the Discord and Twitch staff team, want to clarify what we knew and didn't know regarding Celeste. We were not aware of her true age or that she was a missing person. We also did not have any contact with her outside of what was public. From what was shared in David's Twitch streams and her role in the server, we understood her to be around 18 or 19. She appeared in 2 streams, but otherwise was not active in the server, and we do not have ongoing communication with her. Most of us are not located in California, so we were not aware of any missing persons reports connected to her. Additionally, the staff team has had minimal contact with David or his management. The mention of her full name within the server was not seen in real time due to how fast the chat moves when David pings everyone. As a result of this situation, the majority of the staff team has left the server, and we no longer associate with David. We do not support his actions in any capacity. Our priority has always been the well-being of members in this community. We are deeply saddened by the situation and extend our prayers to Celeste's family. May she rest in peace, and may her family receive justice. While I'm sure that this sentiment is genuine, and although it is quite possible that none of the members of his staff knew about it, there were people in the servers who weren't necessarily staff members who definitely knew. One person in specific by the name of Xerxify, who was David's Twitch manager, was actually caught deleting Discord messages in real time by Redditors. First off, this makes him look quite guilty, and second, I'm pretty sure that if these messages are eventually procured, and they certainly could be given the high-profile nature of this case, he may now be complicit and liable to get a charge of his own. And all of that is assuming that he isn't actually guilty of something, which he very well might be, given his urgency to go delete a bunch of posts on the Discord server, probably because those messages could prove that he knew what David was doing beforehand. A few days after the first big info dump online about Celeste and David's case, a tweet that got a lot of engagement claimed that the FBI was holding David's bodyguard, Mark Morales, aka Marky Next Door, on suspicion for accessory to murder, with an offered reward of $25,000 for information that could lead to his arrest. Mark was then contacted by none other than Neon on stream.
Yo, bro, I'm gonna be honest, bro. I don't want the government to be on me, so I don't know if you could be on my phone.
Hey, buddy, I'm not on the run by the FBI, okay? I don't know why you're saying that.
Yes, you are, bro. You're on the run. Stop.
Hey, look at the FBI wanted poster. It literally says I'm black, and it says my alias is Big Steppa in Tubbs.
What the are you talking about?
Bro, the FBI wanted poster, it literally says I'm black.
Oh, okay, so you're saying it's not you.
No, it's bro. You know what, bro? It was they got mad at Aiden for not streaming, and they made a whole.
You're guilty. You're guilty. Get off my phone. You're guilty.
How old is he?
He's 36.
Bro, you're so weird, bro. Alright, dude, you got it, bro. Stop spreading narratives, dude.
Like Marky said in the clip, the FBI wanted tweet was proven to be fake, as Marky Next Door is actually a streamer who had nothing to do with David or Celeste. Regardless, this is still technically a developing situation, and ultimately, time will tell if legal charges are pressed against David. Although, given everything here, I can't really see it going any other way. Regardless, rest in peace to Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose life was taken far before it could fully develop. I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave me alone.
You motherfucker on it. Shout out to Turkey Tom.
Alright, we back. So they trying to say that he might be part of it, which I don't know. You know, because they trying to say he not cooperating with 12. Who would? But he was cooperating in the beginning. But, I mean, shit changed. You know what I'm saying? He might got lawyers and people, and he might try to try to, you know what I'm saying, help him through the shit. But the girl, she was a goofy. I ain't gonna catch, she was a goofy. You know what I'm saying? She just kept on putting herself in a predicament that she did not need to put herself in. You know what I'm saying? Then we look at the back history. The whole shit is weird. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know he was that famous. How did he, like, I would be knowing, like, how? You feel me? Like, he from where I'm from, Texas. And I still don't know, I didn't know nothing about him. But the streamers knew him. I don't know, it's just weird to me, bro. And, like I said, it's some weird freaky shit behind it. And I don't know, man. We out the bit. Hood and outside, big crib and gang outside shit. You ain't trying to be part of no investigation. They talking about.
Hey, Dad, you know, dog, when we link up, dog, this shit be legendary. You know this instrumental, you the engineer on it, so Kodak everywhere.